The withdrawal of the US from the Paris Agreement has weakened the Paris Agreement and has also fundamentally changed the nature of the Paris Agreement. It has weakened the Paris Agreement by ensuring that it will now be very difficult for the world to meet 2 degrees Celsius target. We all know that the US is the single largest historical polluter of the climate. It has contributed to more than 20% of the global stock of carbon dioxide. And therefore, without ambitious and deep emissions cut in the US, it is almost impossible to meet 2 degrees target, leave 1.5 degrees target that the Paris Agreement had set itself to achieve. Under the Paris Agreement, developed countries are supposed to provide finance and technology support to developing countries so that they can adapt to climate change, as well as so that they can move to low carbon growth trajectory. Now, US withdrawal means that a significant portion of financial contribution that should have gone to developing countries will now not be available. And therefore, again, this is weakening the Paris Agreement. The third point is that Paris Agreement is based on a ratcheting mechanism. Essentially, countries are expected to increase their ambition in every subsequent commitment period. Now, yesterday, Donald Trump said that he's open to renegotiating Paris Agreement if it is quote unquote fair to the Americans. Now, what I can understand is that he wants to renegotiate Paris Agreement and even reduce the current commitment of the US. And mind you, the current commitment of the US itself is extremely modest. Compared to what European Union is going to do, America is only going to reduce its emissions by about 17–18% compared to 40% that the Europeans are going to reduce by 2030. So Donald Trump wants to reduce even the most modest minimalistic commitment that the America has under the Paris Agreement, which means that he will fundamentally change the ratcheting mechanism. Instead of increasing ambition, he wants to reduce ambition, which changes the very basis of the Paris Agreement. So all in all, the withdrawal of America from the Paris Agreement is extremely harmful to the Paris Agreement. And the remaining 194 signatories of the Paris Agreement will have to sit together and decide how to move ahead. Well, there is no punitive measures built into the Paris Agreement, and therefore there is no repercussions. In fact, which is probably the weakest link in the Paris Agreement, that countries can walk away, countries can refuse to fulfill their commitment, and there's nothing that the remaining countries can do. Which is something, again, now that the US is out of the Paris Agreement, the remaining 194 countries will now have to sit together and decide how to fill this gap, fill this weakness which is there in the Paris Agreement. The withdrawal from the Paris Agreement is in fact a formality, because in the past few months, Donald Trump had already started to dismantle the domestic legislation which Obama had built in to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce fossil fuel consumption. In March this year, Donald Trump came out with an executive order which actually allows large-scale expansion of fossil fuel production and consumption in the US. One of the things that he did was actually to order a review of Clean Power Plan. Now, the centerpiece of Barack Obama's climate action in the US was this Clean Power Plan, under which coal and gas-based power plants had to reduce emissions. Now, Donald Trump has put a spanner in this plan as well, which means that without Clean Power Plan, the US will not be able to meet its Paris commitment. In fact, it will not meet even the Cancun Agreement commitment, which US has to meet by 2020. So, most probably, Clean Power Plan is now in the dustbin of history. Today, the cheapest source of energy in the US is shale gas, which is a fact. Now, shale gas is produced through an extremely polluting hydrofracking process, which is polluting for groundwater, land and air. The other thing to understand is that burning of gas is less carbon intensive than coal, but gas also emits methane, and methane is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So the very idea that everyone is talking about is that gas is good for climate and coal is bad is actually factually incorrect, because if even there is little amount of methane that is emitted from the gas wells, the carbon footprint of gas is going to be far more than coal. So today Donald Trump is supporting shale gas. In fact, the entire energy industry in the US is supporting shale gas, which means that the interest in solar and wind and other renewable technology is going to go down, because they are expensive compared to shale gas. With shale gas today, US is producing electricity at half the rate of what Europe is producing. And so one of the fallout of US walking away from the Paris Agreement is going to be that the interest in renewable is going to go down, even though a lot of studies are showing that that interest will not go down. But my feeling is that the investment in solar and wind will reduce, because investment in shale gas is going to increase.